failure is essentially irrelevant unless it is catastrophic.
For SpaceX, the first 3 launches failed, and we're just barely able to scrape together enough parts and money to do the 4th launch. If that 4th launch had failed, we would have been dead. So multiple failures along the way. I tried very hard to get the right expertise in for SpaceX. I tried hard to find a great chief engineer for the rocket, but the good chief engineers wouldn't join, and the bad ones, well, there was no point in hiring them. So I ended up being chief engineer of the rocket. So if I could have found somebody better, then we would have maybe had less than 3 failures.
How do you think about making a decision when everyone tells you this is a crazy idea? Or where do you get the internal strength to do that?
Well, first of all, I'd say I actually think I feel fear quite strongly. So it's not as though I just have the absence of fear. I feel it quite strongly. But there are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough, that you do it in spite of the fear.
There are people who've been in the rocketry business for decades who say about you that you don't know what you don't know.
Well, I suppose that's true of anyone. How can anyone know what they don't know?
But when critics say you can't do this, your answer to them is,
we've done it.
You know, there are American heroes who don't like this idea. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight and the way that you're developing it, and I wonder what you think of that.
I was very sad to see that, because those guys are, those guys are heroes of mine, so it's really tough. I wish they would come and visit and see the hardware that we're doing here. And I think that would change their mind.
They inspired you to do this, didn't they?
Yes.
And to see them casting stones in your direction.
It's difficult.
Did you expect them to cheer you on?
So they're hoping they would.
What are you trying to prove to them?
What I'm trying to do is to make a significant difference in spaceflight and help make spaceflight accessible to almost anyone. So many people try to talk me out of starting a rocket company. It was crazy.
What did they tell you?
One good friend of mine collected a whole series of videos of rockets blowing up and made me watch those. He just didn't want me to lose all my money. We're doing these things that seem unlikely to succeed, and we've been fortunate, and at least thus far they have succeeded. Generally, starting a business, I'd say number one is have a high pain threshold. That's it. There's a friend of mine who's got a good saying, which is that starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. Okay, that's generally what happens, because when you first start a company, there's lots of optimism and things are great, and then so happiness at first is high. Then you encounter all sorts of issues, and happiness will steadily decline, and then you'll go through a whole world of hurt, and then eventually if you succeed, and in most cases you will not succeed, and Tesla almost didn't succeed, came very close to failure. Then if you succeed, then after a long time you will finally get back to happiness. Frankly, starting a company, I would advise people to have a high pain tolerance. It is definitely true that, maybe there are occasionally companies that get created where there's not an extended period of extreme pain, but I'm not aware of very many of such instances. But I do think that new great entrepreneurs are born every day, and we'll continue to see amazing companies get built. But I would definitely advise people who are starting a company to expect a long period of quite high difficulty. It's really not that fun. There are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you're like the worst.
you have a filter for the crappiest problems in the company. The most pernicious and painful problem. I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it and have a fairly high pain threshold.
I mean, as long as people stay super focused on creating the absolute best product or service that really delights their end customer, like if they stay focused on that, then basically if you get it such that your customers want you to succeed, then you probably will. If your customers love you, your odds of success are dramatically higher.
For somebody who's just starting out as an entrepreneur, I think the internet is a great place to start. Because if you're just starting out, unless you've got a ton of capital that somebody gave you or you inherited or something, you have to start a company that requires a small amount of capital, where it's heavily weighted towards the intellectual capital in your head. So I think anything to do with sort of software and with the internet is a really good starting point. It would have been impossible for me to have done electric cars or rockets, right from the start, because I would have those require money to get anything done.
Being focused on something that you're confident will have high value to someone else, and just being really rigorous in making that assessment, because people tend to, a natural human tendency is wishful thinking. So a challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that doesn't actually have merit? And that is a really difficult thing to tell you. Can you tell the difference between those two things?
Right.
So you need to be sort of very rigorous in your self-analysis. Successful entrepreneurs probably come in all sizes, shapes, and flavors. An obsessive nature with respect to the quality of the product is very important. But even if you're the best, there's always a chance of failure. So I think it's important that you really like whatever you're doing. If you don't like it, life is too short. If you like what you're doing, you think about it even when you're not working. I mean, it's something that your mind is drawn to. And if you don't like it, you just really can't make it work, I think.
If you're creating a company or if you're joining a company, the most important thing is to attract great people. So either join a group that's amazing, that you really respect, or if you're building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all a company is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they're focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company. So do everything you can to gather great people if you're creating a company. Then I'd say focus on signal over noise. A lot of companies get confused. They spend money on things that don't actually make the product better. So, for example, at Tesla, we've never spent any money on advertising. We put all of the money into R&D and manufacturing and design to try to make the car as good as possible. And I think that's the way to go. So for any given company, just can keep thinking about, are these efforts that people are expending, are they resulting in a better product or service? And if they're not, stop those efforts. Don't just follow the trend. So you may have heard me say that it's good to think in terms of the physics approach or first principles, which is, rather than reasoning by analogy, you boil things down to the most fundamental truths you can imagine and you reason up from there. And this is a good way to figure out if something really makes sense or if it's just what everybody else is doing. It's hard to think that way. You can't think that way about everything. It takes a lot of effort. But if you're trying to do something new, it's the best way to think. And that framework was developed by physicists to figure out counterintuitive things like quantum mechanics. So it's really a powerful method. I think that the final thing I would encourage you to do is, now is the time to take risk. You don't have kids. As you get older, your obligations increase. So and once you have a family, you start taking risk not just for yourself, but for your family as well. It gets much harder to do things that might not work out. So now is the time to do that. before you have those obligations. So I would encourage you to take risks now. Do something bold. You won't regret it. I think when I was, 5 or 6 or something, I thought I was insane. It was just strange. Because it was clear that other people did not. Their mind wasn't exploding with ideas. It was like, I'm strange. I don't think you'd necessarily want to be me. It's very hard to turn it off. It's like a never-ending explosion. All the time. When I was a kid, I was wondering kind of what's the meaning of life? Why are we here? What's it all about? Came to the conclusion that what really matters is trying to understand the right questions to ask. The more that we can increase the scope and scale of human consciousness, the better we are able to ask these questions. There are certain things that are necessary to ensure that the future is good. Some of those things are, in the long term, having long-term sustainable transport and sustainable energy generation, be a spacefaring civilization, and for humanity to be out there among the stars and be a multi-planetary species. Being a multi-planet species and being out there among the stars is important for the long-term survival of humanity. The part that I find personally most motivating is that it creates a sense of adventure and it makes people excited about the future.
How many things can you buy that you really love, that really give you joy? So rare, so rare. I wish there were more things. That's what we're trying to do. Just make things that somebody loves. The universe as we know it will dissipate into a fine mist of cold nothingness eventually. I don't want to sound like things are too dark, because I think you kind of have to be optimistic about the future. There's no point in being pessimistic. What are the set of things that can be done to make the future better? I think that a future where we are a spacefaring civilization and out there among the stars, this is very exciting. This makes me look forward to the future. This makes me want that future. There need to be things that make you look forward to waking up in the morning. You wake up in the morning, you look forward to the day, you look forward to the future.
That second version is incredibly exciting and inspiring. Life can't just be about solving problems. Otherwise, what's the point? There's got to be things that people find inspiring and make life worth living.
In a future where we are a spacefaring civilization and out there among the stars, I think that's very exciting. That is a thing we want. Whereas if you knew we would not be a spacefaring civilization but forever confined to Earth, this would not be a good future. That would be very sad, I think. If there are two futures, and one future is we're out there among the stars, and the things we read about and see in science fiction movies, the good ones, are true. We have these starships, and we're going to see what other planets are like, and we're a multi-planet species, and the scope and scale of consciousness is expanded across many civilizations and many planets and many star systems. This is a great future. This is a wonderful thing to me, and that's what we should strive for.